Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Do you really quickly want to introduce yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. Guatsi, Duhiname, Tsiakimai, Shuimi Hanu. My name is Soma, and I'm from the Laguna and Jemez Pueblos here in New Mexico.
Hmm.
I am a kind of a jack of all trades, master of none kind of lifestyle
Okay. Okay.
of the past couple of years. But right now, I was working in film before COVID hit.
Mm,
And now that I'm back here in New Mexico, I've been doing work with Pueblo Action Alliance and Seeding Sovereignty
okay.
to, as part of like a relief for Indigenous peoples. So
Cool.
that's what I've been up to for the past couple of weeks.
All right. That's awesome. Did you where were you working in film before you came back?
I was a production assistant on a Netflix show. Um,
Good old PA work, huh? Getting some coffee.
yeah, exactly. Which is funny because I worked in coffee shops and bars
Oh.
here before I moved. So I'm like, finally break into the film business, and I'm still getting coffee for people. But
That's how it turns out. I mean, you got to pay your dues in film biz.
it's true. Well, one day we were filming at this hospital, and I made like an excellent latte for my assistant director.
Nice.
And like over the radio, he goes, "Who made me this coffee?" And I was like, "It was me." And he was like, "It's excellent." And now I have to get him coffee every time. But
Well, that's what
I'm
you
okay with
get.
it.
I mean, it sounds very on brand for ADs in general to be that level of needy.
Yeah, I know. I've actually worked with some good people, but I've definitely heard some like horror stories from
Oh
others.
yeah, I mean, I think the few people that I've heard talked to that work in film, they have nothing to complain about. But I've had a nightmare AD at one point, and I had to get a new phone. Just put it that way.
Hey,
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Like it was an interesting character, but whatever. You know,
yeah.
it's part of the deal. Right on. And so you're, I mean, what brought you into this line of work now? I mean, was it easy transition for you to kind of jump into this advocacy work? Tell me a little bit about your background, even.
Yeah. So as you may know, my mom is the congresswoman for the first district here in New Mexico. So
What?
yeah, so I've kind of been around uh not even necessarily politics my whole life, but I've
Yeah.
definitely always, and
Hmm.
it's like it's weird because it's not even like, the way that I think of it is like it's not work that I want to do, meaning like it's not work that I wish it's work I didn't have to do. but
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
but it's like I feel compelled to do it because I just have to, you know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think from a young age I was really lucky that my mom really, like, one of the biggest things I learned from her when I was young was just like the ability to speak up for myself.
Hmm.
I feel really lucky that I grew up in an environment where I could always be myself, but also like I was part of a playhouse in Southern California when I was little, and it was endangered of being shut down.
Hmm.
So we like I was like 7 years old. We like organized a petition. My mom took me to go stand outside of the grocery store to collect signatures. And so I think from a young age, I've always known the value of doing that kind of organizing work.
Yeah.
And even though like I don't think I'm a great leader per se, but when
Okay.
I am in that position, I feel empowered to do it. So, but I just have friends that work with those organizations, and I was kind of already volunteering, asking what I could do. And then they were like, well, since things are weird right now, they had the ability to hire someone on part-time. So
Hmm.
I feel blessed that I get to do something that's important to me while also not having to file for unemployment, because I hear that's a nightmare.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know a ton of people. I mean, it's film service industry in general. I mean, everyone's really impacted. All of this is just kind of throwing a wrench into society. And I think a lot of stuff is really coming to the surface with, I mean, what's going on this week, right?
Oh,
On the national scale. And Some people saying that like it's not that this wasn't happening before, now it's being filmed. Just like that, COVID's really drawing attention to the gaps that already existed, and disparities that already existed. So it's kind of surprising to see that people are so shocked, honestly. And is it scary that I'm not?
Yeah, like, because I've just, that's what I keep saying, like, especially today, I've just been like,
Yeah.
it's sad that I'm like not even surprised
Yeah.
by anything
Yeah.
that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And then also the sentiment that people are like, I just want things to go back to normal. I'm like,
Dude.
no, like we can't go back to normal. That's the
Yeah.
point. Like
Mm-hmm.
we need to be better. We need to like you said, like see those gaps that exist and take steps to fill them.
Yeah, I mean it's easier said than done, and a lot of the time I think I'm very much the type of person to look at the whole situation and be like, okay, I need to deconstruct it from the inside out, like in and against, and be constructive about it, because if not, then there's a power vacuum and there's somebody equally as bad. It's just going to sneak in and take over. But it's very difficult to kind of deconstruct all of it, right? And how is it for you trying to kind of do that in your daily basis, on a day, your day in and day out, I guess? Is that something that you kind of try to do on a daily basis? And how does like the fact that your mother is in DC, working against this machine, how does that impact you?
Yeah, that's yeah, so I think when I went to New York, like it's very recent that I've left Albuquerque,
Mm-hmm.
and being away from here, I think it was necessary for me to like leave Albuquerque for a little bit, even though I love it so much. But
Mm-hmm.
I definitely felt kind of detached from everything there. And then my mom is the main reason I came home. She was like, "You
Yeah.
need to get out of there right now." So
Yeah.
when I got here, it's just been crazy to see her working. Like
Mm.
I'm not built that way. I'm
Yeah.
I'm very much like I'm an empath. I
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of like mental stuff that I deal with on a
Sure.
daily basis just with myself. So I think since this whole quarantine situation, something that I've needed to do for myself is like make sure I take at least 20 minutes
Uh-huh.
a day for me to like not let myself not think about those things, because I think that the fatigue that you can experience as an activist or as anybody who genuinely cares about the horrible things that are going on, I think
Yeah.
that it's important that we take time to rest
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
replenish our own energy in order so that we can be there for those other people, right? Like, because some days I
Mm-hmm.
wake up like super motivated and pissed off, and I'm like, I'm gonna take all these steps, and some days it's like really hard to get out of bed, and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important to listen to your body, and like on the days that I do feel motivated, I really take advantage of it.
Yeah.
But I think that to move forward in a sustainable way, we also need to take care of our own minds. So but yeah,
Yeah.
my mom is just on all the time. She's
Okay.
constantly eating, she's constantly
Mm-hmm.
doing stuff, and I can't imagine doing what she
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
So but I'm glad I can be here to support her. So
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? There's some of us that can do that, but even then, I'm a very high functioning as well, but does come a point, I think, because we're human, that you just need to stop, because if not, you're just going to have a physical or mental breakdown, emotional.
yeah, and
And
I
it's,
think that
yeah.
too, like there come times where sometimes all I have left is negative energy, and
Mm,
it's important to get angry.
mm-hmm.
We're not gonna
Yeah.
take like we're not gonna make change by being passive, but wow, I totally lost what I was gonna say.
No. It's important to feel angry, and
But yeah, like if I don't stop and replenish, I feel like all I have to put out is more anger, which also doesn't help, right? Like I think that our thoughts,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
words, and our intentions all carry vibrations, and it's important to like reset ourselves so that we can put positive energy into that work as well.
Yeah, it deserves the energy it deserves, right? The positive quote unquote vibrations that it deserves. And I absolutely agree with you. it's something to be said that a lot of the people who do this sort of work tend to be um, just a handful of people in general. So they end up having to kind of pick up the slack for most other people. A lot of these positions aren't high paid, and they're for the most part like volunteer positions. So these people are overworked, underpaid, underappreciated, and then they feel underappreciated, and it just fatigues them, like you said, and it breaks you. And if I mean the ideal in an ideal world, everyone would do a little bit, and we wouldn't have to worry about it, right? But like you said, you're glad that you have the work, but it sucks that you have this job because it shouldn't be happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, and it's also just like, will it ever end? Like, will,
I mean,
will there always be a necessity for this kind of work because, the government who
yeah.
is like supposed to be taking care of us is not doing that, or
I mean,
there
not that
are
you're asking me, I know it's a rhetorical question, but like, I would say, yeah. I would say, yeah. Not because I don't think things won't get better, but I think that there's always going to be something else, right?
yeah. And I also think that the longer we ignore the true
Yeah.
history of this country and how it
Yeah.
was built, like the longer we don't confront that for exactly what it was, then the longer it's going to take to get to where we want to be, right? If we don't.
Well, enlighten me. What was it like?
Uh,
Well, tell me. Yeah.
well, one Native American history class I took 5 years ago. No, I'm just kidding. And I'm not like a great history buff either, but I just think that I had a really unique experience growing up. I
Mm-hmm.
switched elementary schools 9 times. I went to
Mm-hmm.
school on the res. I went to school here in Albuquerque. I had to like take a shuttle from the res out to Grants for like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
part of second grade. My mom and I lived in Santa Monica, California on and
Mm-hmm.
off for a couple years. And that was a totally bizarre experience because like going from the res to going to
Mm-hmm.
California to where we like were learning about Thanksgiving and the Pilgrims, and I'm like sitting there like, but that's not what
Yeah.
really happened. But
Yeah.
as a second grader or whatever, I didn't have like the language to or the
Yeah.
agency to educate my peers. But
Oof.
but my mom actually, she would come into my classes sometimes and educate my classmates about even simple things like this is how we make bread, this is how we do this, just the
Yeah.
simple um like kind of soft education of like, hey, Native Americans are still here and still fighting for things, because that's part of it, right? Like
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
people don't even think Native people exist. Like I remember when I was a kid, like friends parents asking me if I was a feather or dot Indian, like shit like that. That was just like, like some
Right.
people legit don't know. And so I get mad at people for being ignorant, but at the same time, I'm really lucky that I had such a diverse experience growing up, and a lot of people are just like completely sheltered from it because
Mm-hmm.
of the school system and their parents or whatever. So
It's indoctrination, right? So it's really hard to kind of like deconstruct. It takes time. It takes generations to do that. Luckily, I mean, I'm seeing kind of some Gen Zers kind of do that as well, which is really good. And I think that's a very important thing, that they're doing that, because it's I'm actually, I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm going to get to enjoy it, a society completely devoid of like a lot of this discrimination, but maybe my children or their children or whoever is going to be able to kind of experience a life with some ideal kind of utopian kind of aspects, right? And it's never
and
going to be
that's
perfect.
the point, is like
Yeah.
working for future generations. Whereas,
Right.
we live in this country now where everything's about instant gratification, everything's
Yes.
about high speed internet and and I think that if we can't like, if we can't get people to even think about like their neighbors and people who have different experiences than them, then I would at least hope that like people who are that selfish would at least want a better world for their children. You know what I mean? For future generations.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think people kind of lose sight of that aspect of it. When that's I feel like as like me as a Native person, or my friends who are, various shades of brown, so to speak,
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
feel like our cultures we're kind of more raised to think about things that way. And not necessarily everybody is. So
I mean, we don't really have the option to be able to ignore it, right?
yeah.
I had, when I was teaching at UNM, I remember having a student in one of the Spanish classes I was teaching, nice girl, white girl, and smart, pretty, the whole thing. But she would just like, I like to think positively. And I'd rather not think about it, because like, if we don't think about it and we just ignore it, like, it'll solve itself.
Well, and people don't realize the amount of privilege that is just in that statement alone. If you have
Yeah,
the
yeah,
ability to disconnect, if
yeah.
you don't have to think about it because it doesn't affect you or your
Hmm.
friends' daily
Hmm.
life, that is your like
Yeah,
bleeding privilege at that point.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I told her, and there was, I mean, I think it was mostly white kids, couple of African Americans, maybe one other Latino person, including myself. And I said, like, listen, I completely understand where you're coming from. Like, I wish I could, but at the end of the day, I cannot go home and take off my brown skin and just be like, you know what, that was a long day of being brown. I'm gonna just take a break and then go off and about my day. Like, I have to live like this day in and day out, from the second I wake up to the second I go to sleep. Like, I don't have that option.
You also like don't have the ability to control other people's perceptions of you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like I'm pretty white passing. Like I've been told I'm like racially ambiguous, whatever that means. But people don't assume I'm Native when they look at me, and so I know that I have a certain amount of privilege there. But yeah, and people don't realize, like, even just like looping back to current events, like the whole George Floyd thing. I posted something that was like, "Hey, stop posting pictures and videos of this horrible thing happening, because like and it's all my white friends who are posting something like that, right? And it's like, you don't realize that your black friends, your brown friends are seeing this video and like relating to it because that person looks like their dad, their brother, their
Right,
whoever,
right.
like, and that's traumatizing."
It is. I mean, it brings me to tears when I see stuff like that, and it's horrifying, and I am tired of crying over it, honestly, genuinely crying. And at this point, it's just, I'm angry, but it keeps happening. And I'm just like, is it ever actually going to change? And I don't know. I mean, like, I had a conversation with this group that I lead. It's like a multicultural employee resource group at the company I work for. And we were having a conversation around, it's a mouthful. It's Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. It's a long one.
Yeah.
So we were kind of having different conversations about the name of the virus, this and that, and people wearing masks, and how certain states are targeting minorities and saying, don't wear these kind of masks, don't wear gang colors, stuff like that. But then I said to her, and it made sense. Like, I was like, it's a double-edged sword, because we shouldn't have to be told that, or that shouldn't be part of the messaging. But in the same breath, like, I have to be very aware of the fact that I'm like a heavily tattooed brown man
Yep.
wearing a mask and sunglasses. My kids even said, you look like a bank robber." And I'm like, no, I'm fully aware of the fact that, like, if this was any other situation, and if I'm around the wrong group of people, they may assume that I'm up to no good,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
And I have to just be aware of the fact that, like, okay, because of this virus, I'm more, because of like vitamin D and all this other biological stuff that I can go on and on about, but I'm more prone to like receiving it, getting it. For one, I have less resources to getting better. And then
Mhm.
two, if I try to protect myself, I'm demonized and criminalized,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
So
Yeah.
there's no winning.
Yeah, and I think that points back to those, those holes that you said exist,
Hmm. Hmm.
because
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, and just like looking at the Navajo Nation right now too, it's like
Yeah, let's
there's
talk about that. Like, what's going on? Like, just to throw it out there, proceeds from like any purchases on my site or anything like that, 20% are going towards, supporting them. So that's
Awesome.
something yeah, for the listeners, because I know a lot of them skip through my ads. uh
I listen to them every time. If it makes
Thank you. I appreciate it. But I'm just going to say, like, we need to support them, right? So what exactly is happening right now? And can you shed some light on why?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a scholar.
No, no,
I
no.
was a theater major. I'm just gonna put that
Nice.
disclaimer out there. So I'm lucky that I work with a lot of folks who are kind of better at articulating this language than I am.
Sure,
But
sure.
um yeah, so the Navajo Nation, so I left New York because it was like the epicenter of
Mm-hmm.
the virus, right? But the Navajo Nation then came up as the third region behind New York and New Jersey that had the highest rate of infection,
Mm-hmm.
which there's just like no excuse for that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it just like I feel like that could have been heavily prevented, right? So one of the things that people don't consider with social distancing is like when you're out at a reservation, you have multiple generations of families living under one household, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was a kid, I was living with my mom and my great grandma and my mom's cousin, and and I think a lot of families out on
Yeah.
pueblos here in New Mexico and also the Navajo Nation. You have so many people living in one house, so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you
Yeah.
social
Yeah.
distance when you're living with that many people, and when probably at least one of them is still going to work.
Yeah.
So it's hard to protect those people. And then Trump and and all those people, they didn't give money that was supposed to go to Native communities. They did not get that to them.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually they did because of people like my mom speaking up for it, but I'm wondering if they were just like not going to give anybody any money and see if they noticed, like, which is kind of fucked up.
I mean, yeah, come on.
So, and then I think that, people just aren't given the resources. Like
Mm.
already, even in the Albuquerque metro area, you see people not really having the resources they need, but out in a rural community like that, people are ordered to stay at home, but then there's only like one Walmart or one
Yeah.
grocery store for all these people. There's only
So they
a
all come
few,
together anyway.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's only a few hospitals
Mm-hmm.
spread across like that are meant to serve all like so many people. So yeah, the resources just weren't there in the first place. And then when
Yeah.
something like this happens, they,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think what's been happening is I'm honestly I'm impressed at least at the amount of media attention it's gotten. Like I
Mm-hmm.
didn't think that would happen. So I'm glad that big news sources are drawing attention to it. And I think a lot of people have been setting up fundraisers and mass
Yeah.
drives. I know that with the organizations that I'm working with, we've sent some masks out there, and Seeding Sovereignty has set up like places to donate.
Okay.
But
I mean, what do
yeah,
they need? I mean, it's because there's going to come a point where like we have enough masks.
exactly. And I think we're kind of hitting that point right now.
Right.
So, and that only goes so far. So, and I'll send you a link to this too, but on the Seeding Sovereignty website, they even say like, hey, it's not all about masks. We need to donate money for like food and water and supplies.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody has access to a car. Not everybody has access to internet. Not everybody has access to all these things that they need.
Yeah.
Um, like we see 10 times a day on, any social media, wash your hands, wear a
Right.
mask, do
Right.
this, but it's like not everybody even has a computer or smartphone. So I think that, I don't know, to be honest, like
Mm-hmm.
what
Yeah.
exactly is needed, but
I mean,
I think that,
money makes it easy to just kind of allocate to whatever they do need, right? I think that's the thing. That's the point.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I think it's yeah, it's even before this. I mean, we can dive a bit into it as well. There's a reason this is happening there. There's always been a lack of resources. I mean, historically speaking, this country's screwed over the population in general. And then, you don't set them up for success And I guess there's different reasons why infrastructure is not there, or different ideas of what infrastructure is, different building, yada yada yada, right? But at the end of the day, like, we live in a different norm. Our idea of, like, yeah, the internet and having all these things readily accessible is just not accessible there, or don't exist there. So that's just, we need to remember and contextualize and be like, okay, what are they experiencing instead of what we need? And then take it back even further. I'm like, this is something that was going on for a long time. I mean, when I was studying my brief stint in PhD in poli-sci, what was obvious was that a lot of the demographics and a lot of the statistics that were left out were Native American statistics. And
Everyone should
that,
fill out their census too.
yeah, yeah.
So they know we
And a
exist.
big part of it was because if you threw them in there, they were at the top of everything.
Oh,
Native Americans are substance abuse, other things, just other, like, things that you feel like a lot of people seem as just like a choice by a lot of conservatives, are
yeah.
not, right? It's really the source is a lack of access to resources.
Access to
um
resources, and also like things that, like native people were fine before
yeah,
before Europeans got here. Like
for sure.
we were living their lives. Like my
Yeah,
ancestors were chilling hard. Like not, I mean, they had to work to survive, but
no,
like
chilling
things
hard, I like.
were okay, But
Yeah,
it's like they get introduced to alcohol. They get introduced to,
the
you know,
diets, right?
like
The
native
whole
people were
concept of,
literally given
yeah,
blankets with smallpox in them. Like
yes,
they've been trying to kill us off with in every
yeah.
way possible for this long, and then people are like, see a drunk native homeless person and just like
They
assume
chose
that's
they chose to be this
stereotype.
way. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
no,
fucked up because it's like, I don't know, like one. Can I tell a little story really quick?
yeah, all the
So
anecdotes, please.
my mom, this is my one of my favorite stories that my mom has told me from like way before she ran for Congress. But she we both, so I was like a volunteer. No, I was an intern. I was an unpaid intern at
Yeah.
the Obama
Oh,
re-election
nice.
campaign in
Yeah.
2012. And my mom was, uh she had a job. She was a Native American vote director, I believe. So it was kind of cool. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
almost like we worked together because I was
Mm-hmm.
there every day.
Mm-hmm.
But um she would go around to like every native community around New
Yeah.
Mexico. And she told me this story that one time she was at someone's house, like in with many generations in one house, and she brought these voter registration forms, and she registered like 7 people to vote at one time.
Yeah.
And then she said that the oldest member of the house came up to her and said, "Thank you. I've always wanted to vote and I never knew how."
What?
So I think that story for me is a real
Yeah.
testament to everything. Like
Yeah.
people want to participate, people care a lot, but they just aren't even given the information on like what they can do.
They don't know how. They've never been registered. They don't
And
fill
then
out
they're
the
written off
census.
as like
Yeah.
stupid or lazy or whatever, when it's
No.
like the thing,
Like,
when everything is kept from them, right? And it's
yeah.
not accessible, and it's that it just like really breaks my heart.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Most people think that it's that the stuff is commonplace and common knowledge, right? Like, you have access to these things. How can you not know where to vote? Just Google it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like we didn't even have, where my grandma lives, where I grew up, like we just recently in the past maybe 10 years got even street signs. Like she didn't even
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
an address. And so yeah, I
Yeah. I think another thing is the fact that, like, these people, even if you can Google it, like, some people are just working all the time because they're impoverished or whatever, and they don't have the energy, they don't have the time to be able to go to vote or do these things,
exactly.
right?
And I
So it's,
think that is why like that is another reason why people who have privilege, like it's their job to push for certain things, right?
mm,
Like voting, like election day should be a holiday. Like nobody should have to work on
yeah,
election. It
no,
should be
absolutely.
people can go vote. Obviously now, like I have my absentee ballot sitting on the table here because of COVID. It's my first time voting absentee, but
Yeah, same here.
but yeah, like when people are having to work all day, when people are having to, already spend all of their energy just to survive, I think
Yeah.
that's where it becomes the responsibility of those more privileged people to take their time and energy to push for things like, same day voter registration or
Yeah, make it
whatever it is
accessible.
that
Make it accessible,
makes
right?
it easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, that creates equity for people to have a voice.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to do that. You use your privilege that you do have, yeah, to help others,
Yeah.
instead of just only helping yourself. So, I mean, we kind of ran through a lot there. What do you hope to do moving forward? I mean, is this something that you're passionate about, but it's not your dream, is it?
Yeah, it's not. I
Okay.
mean, yeah,
Be honest. Like, I mean, I'm seeing you
I
hanging out with Mark Ruffalo. I was like, what is that? Like, I think it was two different selfies.
yeah.
Yeah.
um which I don't know, man. My life, it it's hard. I feel like there's so many different ways to live your life,
Hmm.
and I don't want to have to choose. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's so many different things I want to do, and sometimes I really like get down on myself because I feel like I've spent a little bit of time doing all these different things, but I haven't
Hmm.
like concentrated or really honed one skill. But I think my life has also been like pretty interesting because
Yeah.
of that, because I feel like I do, I really like follow my gut most of the time. So
Hmm.
I've been doing theater since I was a kid.
Yeah.
That's what I went to school for at UNM. I got my bachelor's in theater arts in 2017. And then I met Mark Ruffalo because he came to DC the night my mom was sworn in.
Oh.
So he's an amazing activist. He is the sweetest man alive. But so I met him that night that my mom got sworn
Yeah.
in January of 2019. And then I just kept in touch with his people. And
Mm.
I was kind of joking, like, oh, if you ever need someone to act in one of Mark's things, let me know. And then somebody texted me one day and they were like, yeah, well, I can't do that, but you can like come be a PA on
Hmm.
a series he's filming in the Hudson Valley. So I packed up all my shit in my car and I drove to Poughkeepsie, New York to live in a hotel for 3 months,
Nice.
which was an amazing experience. And then one of the first team PAs on that show is now my roommate and like
Oh,
my
cool.
closest friend in New York. So it just kind of all fell into place. Like I really didn't have a plan going out there. And then I got offered another job like right away. They were like, hey, we're working on this Netflix show. Do you want to come? So I interviewed for a staff position on that. And that's the show that I was working on before COVID hit. So it just kind of all fell into place by accident.
Hmm.
New York was a really hard transition from Albuquerque, but
Yeah.
I do like it. And I've always been around theater and film.
Hmm.
I I think I really want to act. Like I
Yeah.
keep going back to that and I keep psyching myself out and being like, I'm not actually that good, or like, what if I fail?
Mm.
I'm like, that's,
Yeah.
I'll
No,
regret it
whatever.
more if I'd never tried.
Yeah.
So I'm part of a theater company here in Albuquerque, Tricklot Company,
Hmm.
if you've heard of them. So even while I'm here, I've been like, we normally do a variety show, like Reptilian Lounge, but we're going to do an online version of that for Pride.
Oh.
So I'm in the midst of producing that. But I don't know. I think like overall, like if I could cross some sort of storytelling with like social justice, whatever is at the intersection of that's where I want to be.
Nice.
So, yeah, so I write too. Like I write
Okay.
some poems and stuff. And I dabble in other forms of art. So, but yeah, I have no idea what I want to do is the answer to your question.
No, I mean, I think nobody does. I mean, I don't think anybody does. I still have dreams of doing other things, getting back into film and doing all that stuff. And, it's, you do what's in front of you, and that's all you really can do. And an opportunity
Yeah.
presents itself, you go with it, right?
And I feel like, I used to really not believe this, but I think the more that you lean into what you really want, and the more you I think the last year I've been working really hard to revisit like who I am as a person,
Hmm.
and kind of do a lot of unlearning, and kind of seeing things that I've been through with. I've just been doing a lot of reflecting, and I feel like the more that you follow your heart, so to speak, it sounds cheesy, which is why I don't
No,
really
yeah.
believe it, but the more you like follow your heart, and the more you lean into the things you really care about, I really do think that like the universe presents opportunities to you that you deserve.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just being open to it. You just have to be open to the opportunity, and open to kind of moving forward with it. And hopefully things work out. And if not, there's going to be something else. There always is something else.
Yeah. And I
You
think
know?
the opposite side of that is like learning to let go of the past, right? Like
Oof.
sometimes we don't want to take steps forward because
Yeah.
we're really like scared of having to leave some past version of ourselves behind, but I think it's just so necessary for growth.
Letting go is one of the most difficult things that people can do. I have a
So
hard time.
hard.
Right.
It's
Because you're
so
just like, this
hard.
is what I want and I want it yesterday. But like, this is not what you get. And that's fine. One of my favorite sayings, one of my mentors told me was, there's nothing I ever let go of that didn't have my claw marks all over it. Right. And the idea is just like, yeah, man, it's just like, I hold on to it until it's gone. But it never makes it better. I know that it never ends up good when I'm doing that. It has more potential for ending up well or coming back to me or in whatever shape or way or form if I let it go gracefully and
Yeah, and if you
just
appreciate
practice.
it for like the place that it had in your life, right?
Yeah, because it did mean something, and just because it's not here anymore doesn't mean it won't ever again, or you didn't learn anything from it. It always serves a
And you can
purpose.
like hold on to the memory of something, I think,
Hmm.
without like, yeah, having that that image.
Strangling it to death. You're mine.
Yeah. And that goes with, people, with other things. Like I've really, yeah, I don't know. It's just been such a weird, like the last couple of years for me have been crazy. Like I didn't expect my life to change. I didn't prepare for the amount of changes that would come into my life when my
Yeah.
mom got elected.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like that totally flipped my world completely upside down. And then I think that like I had wanted to make a move before that opportunity presented itself to me in the Hudson Valley, but once I did that, that was a whole other like mess of
Hmm.
changes that I had to go through. And then it's like as soon as I started feeling settled down in New York, COVID hit. So for me, I'm like, oh, this is just another like big change that I have to go through. Um,
Yeah, it's our
but I
generation's kind
think
of lot.
it's made me really
Yeah,
flexible, and it's made me, I've grown up a lot in the past couple of years.
dude, haven't we all? I mean, part of me is
Yeah,
just like, I wish I was a kid again. Um,
really, it's yeah. Like
yeah, it's
appreciate
fun.
it while you can. And I like to work with kids for that reason because I feel like there's a lot we can learn from them too.
The
And
way
I'm
they see
I'm
the
sad
world.
for kids right now. Like growing up
Yeah,
right now would be hard. I'm like I grew up. Imagine growing up and never knowing a world without smartphones. Like that freaks me out
yeah,
to
yeah. No, it's different. I mean, having to call somebody you're interested in, having their parent pick up, and you're like, "Is so and
yeah.
so there?" And they're like, who is this?" Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Now you can just text them or snap them directly, and I mean, I'd probably be a mess if that was the case. I'd be in so much trouble.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, oh, yeah, totally. Anything you want to plug before we leave? Any websites, anything like that you think would be beneficial for people to kind of maybe go donate and stuff like that?
Yeah, just check out Seeding Sovereignty, and Pueblo Action Alliance on Instagram.
Okay.
Follow them. And yeah, that's all I can think about right now. Make sure everybody votes. Make sure you fill out the census.
All the stuff that
So
is
my
important.
mom said to tell you hi, by the way.
Oh,
I
well, cool.
remember, because I remember there was a point, you know, like I'm a little like oversaturated with media about her, but
Yeah.
I remember coming across your podcast and just appreciating that you like just talk to her like a person. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Cause she
I,
is.
yeah, well, and she's really great. Like, there's so
Mhm.
much about like many amazing things about her that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
And I feel if one blessing has come out of being here, it's that I've gotten to spend so much time with her.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I just enjoyed that, and she said to tell you hi.
Good. Good. I think a big part of that, and just so to add some context, is that I hanging out in film sets, as you know, with Mark. You realize that they're just humans, right?
Yeah,
And there's this whole persona, there's this whole person that you see on the outside. And this isn't about like asking them about their political points or asking them about their fame or whatever. It's about being like, who are you and what makes you who you are? That's why when I saw her making you actually happy belated birthday.
oh, thank you.
Yeah, when I saw her making you your birthday cake, I was like, yeah, because she's dope at making cakes. And I know that because I interviewed her,
Yeah,
right?
I know, it's funny. It's yeah, and I think I'm very lucky. Well, it's not even that I'm lucky. It's just that she really hasn't changed at all, like as a person.
Good.
So I sometimes forget.
I was scared that that would happen because it happens to a lot of people, but I'm glad that she's still, because she's so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So I'm really lucky for that. So yeah,
Cool.
everybody vote. Everybody do your part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cycle.
And
Tell the other you
if you
love it.
can and don't have access to stuff, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
Right. Don't be afraid to ask for help. So cool. I'm gonna hit stop record if you're listening. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.